Okay, now it's time to introduce our speaker, Sia.
What the hell was that? Okay. Wow. If I ever run away from home, I'm coming to the Glum Knot lot. I love it. I'm Sia. I'm an alcoholic too. It's great to be here. I want to thank Kenny for driving, and I'm glad we found it. You know, this is my second run at sharing here with you guys this year. I, in my brilliant sobriety, was sure you started at 8 o'clock. And so Scott, you know, had called me. He said, well, how far are you? I was like, way the hell down there. So we rescheduled, and I'm grateful to come back. This is such a wonderful group. If you're new here, you're so lucky. I know a lot of people here. I want to congratulate the birthday people and the chip people, and even if you're feeling crummy, I'm congratulating the new people, because, you know, it took a lot for me to get here. And I felt terrible when I was here, but I was in absolutely the right place in Alcoholics Anonymous. And so I thank you for inviting me here to tell you what you did for me. And so I'm going to talk about what I used to be like, what happened, and what I'm like now. And basically, I hate people without a program. Let's just start right there, okay? You know, what are they for? They're looking at you like you're looking at me, and they're thinking things without my permission. And, you know, I felt like that ever since, like, I went to kindergarten, and my problem in kindergarten is there were too many of them to kill, you know, and so you just give up. And I think I was born fed up. I grew up in an alcoholic home, which is not why I'm alcoholic, but I did be quiet. I did see it. And nothing about it recommended it to me. My dad was the alcoholic. He said so I'm going to call him one. And my dad was this wonderful guy. He was this big guy. He was like the Kareem of his day. He played All-American college ball in Madison Square Garden. He got attention in the newspaper. When he drank, though, something else happened. And I guess the effect produced was going on for him like it went on for us. But the effect produced from my perspective was terrifying, because he was this big guy. He never roughed me up, but he kind of came on hard to my brothers. And he would be, I was a kid who would wait for him. I just loved him. I love alcoholic men. I've dated a lot of you, married too many of you. If I married anyone here, I'm so sorry, you know. You just got to find your part in that, however. And so, you know, my dad would come home, he'd miss a driveway, park on the lawn, fall out of the car, then he'd go and wake up the neighbors, and the neighbor would tell him to go away. And I would want to kill them, because it just, you know, I loved my dad. I felt humiliated. I didn't even know that word, but I hated it. I hated it. And so I didn't want to drink. I wanted nothing to do with drinking, nothing to do with it. And I'm going to talk about two words that matter a lot to me in Alcoholics Anonymous. One of them is powerlessness. And this is my third time in AA. I didn't get with that powerlessness thing, because I thought my dad wasn't powerless. He said he was an alcoholic, so what is that? And what's interesting about powerlessness, I don't know if this is your experience, it's mine. When you find out you're powerless, nobody has to explain it to you. And I do not think it's something that can be imparted to someone who is not powerless. It's a paradox, you know. And so I found out what powerlessness was. And before I was aware of powerlessness, I want to talk about identification, too, the other big word in Alcoholics Anonymous for me. Because when I look back at my life, my real problem was I wasn't identifying, not in the way we do here, but with other people. I just didn't feel a part of. And we talk about that a lot in AA, and I was grateful that we did, because it was sort of a secret of mine. I didn't want anybody to know I didn't fit in, because I think they would tell me to go away or something. And I didn't feel a part of in my family, you know. They were nice-looking people. I usually mention this when I share, and I was this tall, skinny thing with buck teeth and scraggly hair. That's a quote from a police report, so just rude. And, yeah, and so, but I didn't need the police report, I just didn't fit in. And then I remember going to kindergarten, as I mentioned, and I didn't feel a part of in kindergarten either, and I became a disenfranchised kid. And a lot of disenfranchised kids will join gangs, and I am one of those people. I joined a gang. And the thing that was my problem, when I came in AA, you said, wow, you have a lot of problems, but the common denominator of all those problems is you, Sia. And I never knew that, I never thought that. But anyway, I joined this gang, and I brought me into the gang. And I have a lack of respect for people and things until I got a program here. And so some gangs have colors. I don't know if anybody else was in a gang. Well, their colors were ugly. And I felt it was an important point to bring up, which I did. And we're not the only, we have traditions, is what we call them here, right? But other groups have their own kind of customs and ways of doing things. And so these people, like I didn't like their colors. And I started to bring up other things, and they started noticing me. And just so you know how macho I am, this gang is also known as Girl Scouts, okay? And yes, the secret society of Girl Scouts. And if you know anything about Girl Scouts, they have this thing called Girl Scout cookies. And I happened to be doing something funny with the cookie money. I was like cooking the books, and this was their big chance, so they uninvited me to be a Girl Scout. And this was the beginning of a fatal progression. The book talks about that reference to our drinking. But the fact of the matter was, every organization I became a part of, up to and including my own family, uninvited me to be in that organization. I do not know how to get along. I do not respect you. I do not follow rules. Things just don't work out. So that's how it goes. When I was 17 or 18, I was in a local college watering hole. And the book is my autobiography. I don't know if it's yours. And the ending can be a happy ending, or it can be a tragedy. So far, mine's been a happy ending, thanks to Alcoholics Anonymous. But I was in a local college watering hole, and I had this terrible feeling of loneliness. The book says alcoholics are tortured by loneliness. I don't know if you relate to that. I do. And I was going to die before I told anybody that I felt that way, but I felt that way. And so I just decided I wanted to try to fit in, and that's when I decided to have a drink. And it's no big deal, this drink. It was a beer. And what I cannot tell you when I think about this evening is, I don't know if it was the first sip of this beer, or the middle of the glass, or the bottom of the glass, or the bottom of the evening, I don't know. But somewhere along the line, the thing the book calls the effect produced happened for me. And what it was is this problem I had all my life of looking at you in kindergarten and Girl Scouts and your family. I didn't fit in. And that night, that problem, packed its bag, put its hat on, and it walked out the back door of my life. And I'm going to tell you something. If you have a problem as big as that was to me, I'm an obsessive thinker. We're obsessive thinkers. I thought about that problem night and day. And if you have a problem as big as that was, and you find an answer for it, I don't know about you, but I'm going to get my hands on that answer as often as I can. So I began to drink as often as I could. I grew up in Montana, and we have reservations in Montana. And I began to drink on the reservations because the folks on the reservations did not have my family's phone number to call about my behavior. I don't know what you're like when you're drinking, but I got a few little peculiarities. One thing I'll say to you is, as I mentioned, I like men. And I was born with Adidas on, I sometimes think. I'm in a hurry. So if I like you, I don't even need your name. If I'm drinking, I just take my clothes off. I announce myself, and sometimes my timing would get off. And one time I did it at a wedding reception, and I was not the entertainment, haha, and that didn't go well. But the other thing is, if you do not go along with my program, I get a little upset with you, and so I will chase you with a knife. Now, hey, how can you blame me? And I never worked at Benihana's. I don't know martial arts. I don't know what I'm doing, chasing this guy with a knife, these guys. I remember the first time it happened, he was surprised. I was surprised also. But then it kind of became something. I'm not telling you it was thousands, but it was a pattern. And they kept being surprised. I wasn't. And here's an interesting thing. When I came in AA, I felt like my life was everybody else's fault. I don't know if anybody else felt like that, but this time I felt like that. And some old timer said to me this time, you know what, Sia? If your life is somebody else's fault, AA ain't gonna work for you. And you know what, this time, I needed AA to work for me. I don't know about you, what you're doing here on this nice Saturday night, but it had to work. There was nothing else. I was well aware of no other option. So I was kind of like that, and I think when I drink, I get hope. I don't know how you would describe it. And I'm a spiritually bankrupt person. I don't have that language then, but that's what I was. And so when I have a drink, it changes everything. And I want to feel that feeling till the end of the line, you know? And so I stay out all night. And my parents had separated at this time. And I guess one of my brothers felt called upon to talk to me about my behavior. And you know what? I ain't taking that from him. I don't care if you're my family. I'll kill you. I'll kill the whole family, you know? And I got in a fist fight with my brother, and my mom had to get between us. And now I become the unwelcome hanger-on, as the book talks about. And I'm on a geographic. And I'm on a geographic. I'm drinking in Beverly Hills. Here's the part where I think of the book. It talks about whistling in the dark. I don't know if you remember that phrase, but there it is. And the way it applies to me is I either couldn't or would not look at my drinking. And so I was lying to myself, basically, is what I was doing. And yes, I was drinking in Beverly Hills, but the part I left out when I might be talking to you is the fact I was drinking at the bus stop in Beverly Hills. And that's kind of a different picture, you know. And eventually, and pretty soon, actually, I ended up drinking at this place way downtown in Los Angeles called the Good Night, which it wasn't. So if you're deciding to leave AA, I wouldn't look it up. It's a rough bar, if it's still there. And when young women drink in rough bars, sometimes stuff happens. And what happened in this bar, there was another young woman who drank there. I didn't make friends with her. I do not make friends with women when I'm drinking, because men to me are human-sized credit cards and women are competition, you know? And anyway, this other young woman ended up with her head blown off in the vacant lot behind the building this bar was located in. I don't know what kind of violence was in your drinking. That was not typical of mine, and it frightened me. It frightened me because I was a lot like this girl. Her name was Debbie. When I'm drinking in a bar, in a social situation, I start doing stuff that gets me in trouble. I get between you and your drink. I interrupt conversations. I get between you and your date, or maybe the show you're watching at the bar, you know, and so there's tension that comes, fights break out, that's what happens. And so this is when I said to myself the same thing some folks had already started to say to me, like, why don't you back off? Why don't you chill? Maybe you've had more than your fair share. I just, you know, tell you to hit the road, but now I started to think about that. And the problem was, I could say what I wanted to myself. Now I started drinking behind my own back now, instead of yours, you know. And it's kind of a funny thing to say, I guess, but let me tell you something. I've lived a long time sober. Life happens. And I was out there for a while. But of all the things that have happened in my life, the worst thing that has ever happened to me, and ever will be, is the fact I was unable to stop drinking when I wanted to. I mean, come on. This is called free will. That's what separates man from animal. And I didn't have it. I lived like an animal. I felt like an animal. I hated my guts. You know, we call that the bondage of self in Alcoholics Anonymous. A couple of things propelled me into AA the first time. First of all, if you go home tonight, God forbid you deburglarized, but you'd probably notice. And you know, I was burglarized around this time, but like I didn't notice for a couple weeks. Come on, you know, who lives like that? I just hated my guts then, the bondage of self that we talk about. And the other thing that happened is, excuse me, I was looking out of the window one day of the place where I was living at the time, and I saw this guy walking down the sidewalk with a shotgun. I'm from Montana. I know a shotgun when I see one. I thought that was pretty out there, you know, for a city street. Anyway, so he crosses the street, comes in the courtyard of my building, and I hear footsteps up the stairs. They stop at my door. So I know this guy's at my door with a shotgun. And my mind starts to race. Remember how Bill Wilson says that in his story? My mind's racing because I didn't recognize that guy. And I'm thinking, did I do something to this person in a blackout? Is that what they're doing at my door? Or was it the people I lived with? Because I lived with those kind of people. They would have been fair to say the same thing about me. I didn't know. You know, all I knew to do was stand on my side of the door and just be as quiet as possible. And it felt like, I don't know how long it lasted. It felt like it lasted 1,000 years. And then for some reason, I heard footsteps going back down the stairs. And this person walked out of my life. I got a break. And you know what this moment reminded me of? It reminds me of a moment that began to happen with sickening regularity, where I would come to or wake up, I don't know how you characterized it, and I would say to myself, you know, I ain't doing this anymore. I'm not going there. I am not hanging with those people. I'm going to turn this around. I would say that again and again and again, and it would never change. You know, you would just want to, I don't know about you. I'm talking about obsession of the mind. I want to bash my head against the wall, get run over by a car. There's no off button for that I ever found. That's how that was for me. That's how that was for me. A couple of things happened that propelled me into Alcoholics Anonymous. Sometimes when you go there, it's really something, ain't it? When you go back there. I'm glad it's what it used to be like. That's what I'm going to say. Anyway, so here's the thing. I was someplace waiting for the obsession of the mind to hit, because that's what ran my life at that time. And I read about Alcoholics Anonymous in, I think, the community service section of the newspaper. And from what I recall, it said something like, we hold hands here, we pray, and we don't drink anymore. It was something when I read it and I thought, that's as corny as hell. That was the first thing I thought. But then this other voice spoke up in me, and I've heard other folks say that too. And it said, quiet. It was quiet. It said, I want to go. And that voice got the swing vote, you know. And so I went to my first meeting, and it was a nice meeting. It was a daytime meeting, smaller than this, but they had it going on. You know, they had a greeter at the door. There was a woman who knew I was new. She gave me her phone number. They put me in the front of the meeting, and the old meeting starts. And what happens is I get an attack of self-centered fear, just like in kindergarten, and then I want to get the hell out of there. But I'm too embarrassed to get up and leave because people are one of my 100 forms of fear, it turns out. So I just shut down. I came to that meeting for help, and at the end of the meeting, I couldn't wait to get out of there. I don't have your damn book. I don't know your steps or traditions. I ain't calling that lady. That's how I get help. And I went home, and I don't know how much time passed. Some time passed. And here's what I noticed out of nowhere. That thing, I don't know about you, but in my case, that I can't pay away, pray away, hide from, outwit, outwait, negotiate with, obsession of the mind, that thing was gone. I was shocked. And you would never have convinced me that Kenny did it, or Tom did it, or Alicia did it. No, I would never believe some alcoholic did it. But I had to concede something happened in that meeting. And you know something? That moment has been the dividing line of my life before and after. I drank again, but I could never forget you. That's the effect produced by AA for me. I was having what we call a pink cloud experience. I was grateful to Alcoholics Anonymous. I thought, you know, if something comes up, I'll be right back. And it's almost like the illness heard me. And so I had a couple of weeks where I was just leaping out of bed, having the time of my life. And what I was doing there is I was being self-reliant. And if you're new, the book warns about that, which is a contradiction, isn't it? Aren't we supposed to be self-reliant? You can't be. I can't be with alcoholism. So a couple of weeks passed, and I decided to go see somebody I always had a bad history with. And it went the same as it always did. I got in a big disagreement with them, and I blew my sobriety is what I did. Then I came back to Alcoholics Anonymous because I wanted that thing that happened in the first meeting. What cup do you get from the coffee stand for that? I had no idea how to summon that, you know what I'm saying? And I didn't have your phone number, and I didn't have your sponsor, and I didn't have your literature, I had none of that. And so basically I got swept out of the door with my alcoholism. And I was out there for a long time. I was out there for 11 years. Sometimes folks never get back here, you know. And things got worse, like we say they do. They got worse. I ended up in London, and I was modeling. That's what I called it. I don't know what you'd have called it. And I'm in the I Can Club. You know, if you're new, there's a shorthand for the first 3 steps. 1 is I can, 2, God can, 3, let him. So I'm in the I Can Club. And you know what happens with an alcoholic like me and the one like my dad, and probably you too, I don't know what you're doing here again on this Saturday night, we get removed. You know, we may die, we get removed that way. Or maybe we don't show up for the job and we get canned. Or maybe we don't show up for the relationship and they file. Or maybe we can't make the car payment and they take the car. And maybe we don't show up for the job. You know, we get removed. And I got removed. And the way that it happened is I was staying out all night, and I showed up for this job, and I don't know what they thought of me the way I looked, but I guess they were optimists. And so they put me together, and they took these pictures, and they got them back, and you know, they showed me these pictures. My face was bloated, my eyes were bloodshot, not a vision for you, haha. You know, and they were mad, and I had had too many bad working days, I guess you could say. I walked down runways with dresses on backwards, walked out of my shoes. So this was it, you know, they were like, get out of here. And it felt like the minute I left that agency, the Bank of England called, and I was a little overdrawn at the bank. You know, this is where the book says we can't separate the true from the false. I thought I had a lot of money. I had negative money. And then there's something the book says, God's everything or God's nothing. And you know when God's everything for an alcoholic like me? When there's nobody else to call. And there was a woman in that business who had broken her anonymity to me. And I called her that day. And I went to Alcoholics Anonymous in London. I went to Hines Street is the meeting. If you ever go, I think it's still there. It's a good meeting. And once again, Alcoholics Anonymous did something for me. But here's the problem. I have an attitude without significant spiritual assistance. And I had a certain agenda for the privilege of being sober with you. Certain things were supposed to happen. And the deadline for that came and went. I wasn't discussing it with you, but it came and went. And you didn't fulfill. And so there's another thing the book says. There's one who has all power, may you find him now. And that day his name was Gerald, because Gerald had offered to take me on a geographic. And so me and Gerald go to Gatwick Airport, and we're standing there, and he's buying the tickets. And the federales come swooping down, and they arrest Gerald, but they also arrested the tickets, which is that thing in the book, take a trip, not take a trip. And I didn't have enough program for not take a trip, you know? So I blew my sobriety again. And then I did something I didn't understand. I went back to Alcoholics Anonymous. I went to a meeting. And I was mad. I was sitting in that meeting, and I thought, I ain't going to talk to you about this. I'm sick and tired of you telling me what the score is. I'm going to figure it out myself. And I sat there, and I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I thought about it. And I finally came up with this. I do not know what meeting it was. I do not know what person was talking like I am talking, sharing their experience, strength, and hope. Don't know what was said. But somewhere along the line, I had crossed that other invisible line in Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, there's the one between the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic. And then there's the one between me and you. I am very separate if I don't have enough spiritual wherewithal. And somewhere along the line, Alcoholics Anonymous had become my home. I had identified here, behind my own back. And I was in trouble, and so I went home. That's what I was doing there. And at the end of the meeting, there was a guy visiting I'd never seen before, and I came up, and because he was a stranger, I told him a little more about myself than I would normally would. And he listened politely, you know, like we do with new folks. Listened politely, and then he said to me, you know what, Sia, if you got 6 months of your life to give, why don't you work this program as Bill sees it, not as Sia sees it? And he wasn't being a wise guy, you know, he was straight up. And then he gave me a phone number, and he said, why don't you call this guy? And then he walked away. And so now I'm standing at that turning point that we describe and how it works. And I'm going to ask God's protection and care with complete abandon, or the unsaid thing is, I ain't. And you know, I have stood with plenty of people now, because you did with me. And I've given them my phone number, and I say, give me a call, I'll be glad to help you. And you know, sometimes they say to me that they can't. But you know what I know? Now I know the difference between honest and not honest. That ain't the truth. The real truth is you won't. And that's a life or death decision for a lot of us that sometimes we don't even realize. And so that day, no other offer on the table, I made a call. And here's what was going for me that day. I not only knew I could not stop drinking, I was aware that I was going to die. That made me very desperate in a different way. So I dial this phone, and the person picks up, which was a gift to me from God, although I didn't recognize it then. And they started talking to me. Here's the thing with me, too. I don't know if there's any other recovering know-it-alls in this room. I am one. You know, I mean, I got a snarky answer for lots of things. And when you said this is an allergy of the body and an obsession of the mind, I was like, I'm all over that. I know when I drink, I get an allergy for my boyfriend and an obsession for yours. You know, move right along there. And so this person started talking, and they knew what they were talking about. You know, they knew what they were talking about. But here's the problem. I already heard this stuff. And so I don't know what I was expecting to happen, but I started losing altitude. Do you know what I mean? And when they came to something at the very end, they said, you know what? If you want to clean up your act, maybe we can help you. Do you know what that is if you're new? That's what we call in AA the flimsy reed. Out of nowhere, somewhere to go. And I jumped on that. I jumped on that. This was Clancy. I got sober in the Pacific Group. I got on a plane like bowed out of Hell Airlines or something, and came over to Los Angeles and got sober in the Pacific Group. One alcoholic yelling at another. You know, I had no idea. And I love them dearly because that was the place where I could hear Alcoholics Anonymous, somewhat involuntarily at first, okay, but I did. And he said to me that, and I came here. And I want to talk about how that experience was for me. Because they were very kind to me. You know, I didn't have transportation, I didn't have money, I didn't have a roof. They helped me out. And I went to my first meeting, somebody of the home group, somebody gave me a ride. And you know what? There's a lot of people that go to that meeting, like this. It's bigger than this, actually. It's like, it was 1,000 people. And you know what? They didn't look like alcoholics to me. You don't particularly look like alcoholics to me either. First of all, you're fully clothed, okay? And so am I, lucky you. But anyway, I got this attack of self-centered fear, and this guy noticed. And he said, well, you know, you're here, so you might as well stay till the end of the meeting. And I thought, easy for you to say, dirtbag, you got the car keys. Of course, I didn't say that. I'm not stupid. But, and I went in the meeting, and it was overwhelming and terrifying. And the meeting started, and I heard nothing. Okay, I just shut down. I heard nothing. I was so scared. At the end of the meeting, I made a beeline for the exit. I'm heading out the door. I'd love to have asked myself all those years ago, where are you going now, Sia? Where are you going now? By then, that third time coming to AA, I'd been uninvited to one entire country, thank you very much, and I had been uninvited to every organization I was a part of, including my family. If that has happened to you, I got my family back because of Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't even want my family back, but you know, AA does these things without your permission, and I had a lot of problems, and I had a secret. My secret was I happened to be married to 2 people at the same time. One of them found out, and I tried to treat it like an accounting problem, you know what I mean? And I you know, and he wouldn't go for it. He's like, what do you mean you lost count? It ain't a high number, 1, 2, you know, so I pretty much had nowhere to go. And anyway, so I'm heading for the exit, and this guy heads me off at the pass, and he says, how would you like a coffee commitment? I felt like saying to that guy, how would you like me to kick your ass? You know, I was so scared. And, but I didn't say that. I said instead, I came up with a lie. I said, well, I'm only going to be here 2 weeks. So he said, okay, great, just take it for 2 weeks. I didn't have an answer fast enough, so I felt like I'd been sold into sex slavery or something. It was just terrible, just terrible. But there was something that happened there that I didn't understand because I was spiritually illiterate. And what it was is this thing that had eluded me the first couple times in AA. It is the $100 word for my money in Alcoholics Anonymous. It is the thing I protect against all things. It is why I'm grateful you invited me here, because I need the business, okay? And the word is surrender. And I do not think I did surrender. I think that I was surrendered. I think that's what happened. I think the meeting, the way it was run, the focus, the purpose, all of that conspired to speak to something in me that wanted to live. And so, that's what happened. And you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of a time when I was drowning. I'm an excellent swimmer. I used to swim competitively, but I had underestimated the situation that I was in at the time, just like I underestimated alcoholism. And I was drowning. And the body fights. It wants to live. It doesn't take a group conscience. It fights, it fights, it fights. Then there was nothing left. Excuse me. And I was just going to end up wherever I was going to end up. And then out of nowhere, there was something to stand on. So I could get my head out of water. I could get some air, and I lived. I lived. That's what happened. That's what Alcoholics Anonymous is. Such a surprise to me. Such a surprise. As a spiritually bankrupt person, I cannot understand what is going on. But I have been a student here, learning about alcoholism. And there's, what does that say? Sit down, go away. Oh, 10 minutes. Okay, thank you. We've had enough of you. Familiar with that one. There's a couple of things about Alcoholics Anonymous that I want to talk about because I feel I understand why this is my third time in AA. I ain't claiming to be an oracle, but here's the deal. As I said, I underestimated alcoholism. There is a trend to say that alcoholism and addiction are the same thing out there. We do not say that in AA. And I'm not here to argue about it, but here's what I'm going to tell you. Dr. Silkworth, in the book, he's a medical professional. This idea didn't come from two alcoholics talking to each other in 1935. No disrespect to Bill and Bob. This guy, Dr. Silkworth, had been studying the population of addicts and alcoholics for like 40 years. He was watching us die around him. And here's what he came up with. Addiction is normal. Anybody who uses an addictive substance is going to get addicted to it. Alcoholism, however, is an allergy. It is abnormal. Fewer than 10% of people who drink become alcoholics, like us. I hadn't paid attention to this at all. And the thing about that I thought about is I have another allergy. I don't know if anybody has another allergy besides alcohol here. I have an allergy to penicillin. And I'll stake my life on this right in front of you all. I ain't scoring a shot of penicillin again in this lifetime. That will never happen. And then I thought about a person allergic to peanuts, the peanaholic. Do you think that a peanaholic is going to pursue a peanut into the gates of insanity and death? Hell no, that ain't happening. How come? Because they do not have the second feature of alcoholism that Dr. Silkworth identified, obsession of the mind. Hey man, I ain't drunk up here, but I still got alcoholism. I got it. And it manifests, that's why they call it a spiritual malady. It manifests in my thinking, in my defects of character. I didn't understand this. I didn't understand. I blew right past obsession of the mind. It's alive and well right here. And that's why I need a program every day. And I got no problem with that. You know why? Because you've made life fun for me. You've made life good for me. You've ruined my reputation. I hate people. Now I cry, all the time. And it's disgusting, And that's your fault. And I'm here and you're stuck with me. So there it is. But anyway, that was a very important thing for me to notice this time. and I feel my sobriety has some pretty strong, it's not like I got it, it's just I get what's wrong with me. I'm not underestimating it anymore. So I got like 5 minutes. I'm going to tell you a couple great things that happened for me. Many have. But I came into AA, like I said, hating everybody, including my parents. And I hated my mother. My mother was an untreated Al-Anon. She used to scream a lot. She had a nervous breakdown. And I thought, does anybody know what's going on in this house? If I ever get out of here, I'm never forgiving her. I hate her guts. And when I came in AA and you started working a program with me, you said, you know what that's called? That's called a justified resentment. And it's the most dangerous kind. Sia, you want to drink again? No, I do not want to drink again. And so you told me, okay, what you're going to do is take contrary action with your mother. Be of service, try to be helpful to her. And so I did that. I didn't want to do it, but I did it, and I kept real careful score. You ever do that? Because I didn't want AA tricking me, man. And this day came, this weird day came where I guess I didn't have a big chip on my shoulder with my mom, and she told me something I never knew. She told me when she was a little girl, she went someplace and she was assaulted. And then she tried to tell her mom about this, and I guess her mom couldn't believe it or couldn't. Anyway, she told me this, and then my mom collapsed in front of me. And I'm looking at this woman who has fallen apart, and here's what I'm thinking about. I came in AA, and you said to me, you'll stay as sick as the secrets you keep, Sia. That's called pride, and it is a big problem for us. And so one by one, I had divested myself of secrets, and that had been one of mine that had happened to me. And as I was looking at my mother, here's what I understood. I understood I'd been healed by Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, I had that resentment, and I wasn't pitching a tent over it. Do you ever do that? You know, that's obsession of the mind, where you pitch a tent over something you hate, and you never leave. You tend the fire. There's spiritual malady. And so as I was looking at my mom, I was healed, and my heart broke open for my mom is what happened. I had this moment of compassion. And I don't know if you guys ever met Cubby Selby. He's gone to the big meeting in the sky, so I'll use his last name. Because Cubby said something so beautiful to me about something like this. He said, the most sacred ground is where an ancient hatred is turned into a current love. And my heart broke open for my mom with compassion. And you know, it's made me able to be with you and love you, whether you like it or not, and to be useful in Alcoholics Anonymous, and to go out from here with a big book under my arm, metaphorically speaking, and be useful in other places. I love that so much. I don't know if I have 2 minutes or something. I'm going to talk about my father. My father, as I told you, was alcoholic. And this thing happened. My dad was driving someplace, and he had a stroke, and he crashed his car. And he got out of his car. He was staggering down the street, and folks thought he was drunk, so nobody was helping him. And then his closest friend in the world happened to be coming downtown the long way, and he sees my dad at that precise moment. So he could get out of his car and he could help my dad, so my dad didn't collapse and die in the gutter. And I had to ask myself when I heard this, when he could get him to the hospital. And my dad didn't live very long, but he didn't die in the street. And I had to ask myself then, because I have struggled with God, do you tell me, Sia, you don't believe in God? There's too many examples of that. You guys, you're so polite, you're very quiet. You could not be drinking if you're alcoholics. And you know, the thing with my dad and the thing with my mom. And so I keep coming back here because I love how it feels to be sober with you. And I think my time is up. You know, I'm from Montana, and we say in Montana, when you fired both barrels, it's time to sit down. So thanks for the 12-step call.